So hi, this is Lynn from Repicture, and today we're going to talk about structural engineering careers. We're really excited to have with us today Natalie C. Now, Natalie is a structural engineer in California. She has about 20 years experience, but Natalie also is part of the leadership of the Structural Engineering Engagement and Equity Program. So we're going to talk to Natalie about both structural engineering and some of the work she's done through that program. So Natalie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm really excited to be here and share some thoughts and ideas and experiences with you and this bigger audience.
Great, so thank you. So we will start talking about structural engineering and just kind of curious, what type of structural engineer are you?
I work primarily in the design of buildings. So anything associated with buildings, whether it's the structure, basically the skeleton of the building, or things that go in the building. And sometimes we will also design art structures, things that go outside of buildings, part of landscaping. We have a pretty expansive list of clients that we work with, sometimes building owners, sometimes it's building owner representative, landscape architects, mechanical engineers, electrical and plumbing. So lots of different clients and lots of different types of structures.
That's great. And I love the fact that you do not just do buildings, we actually do art structures also. Mm-hmm. and that's fantastic. People don't really think about structural engineers being involved in those types of projects.
Yeah, and actually they have another different kind of fulfillment that they bring to you. And ultimately, like what we do is we work to put somebody's vision to reality, and whether it's an art structure or a huge building, it can still bring lots of fulfillment.
So that's a great description. And I was going to ask you, like, what's your favorite part of being a structural engineer, or why do you like structural engineering? You kind of touched on that. Is there any other reasons why you like structural engineering?
Well, structural engineering is great in the sense that it's a really nice combination of everything that I liked as a kid, even growing up. So there was, and not just things that I liked, but things I happened to be good at. So art, math, and science, and solving problems and building things. So for somebody who, even in my early childhood, I loved to draw things and I loved to paint. And so it was really, I felt really fortunate to have discovered this career that could apply creativity, and where what you do day to day varies so much that there's never really a dull moment. But that's just me. Everybody's going to be different in this career. But in addition to that, in addition to solving problems, which is really fun, one thing that I discovered over time is really like the opportunity to work with other people and collaborate on finding solutions. It's not just solving problems that is fun. It's the solving problems with other people who have a unique education, a unique background. It's that combination of people and ideas. And when there's an opportunity for you to really like find a problem that's challenging, that you don't really have just one answer, it becomes that much more beautiful, I think, the interactions. So I would say that a big part of what I love about structural engineering is really the interactions that you have with people day to day. And it's not just your colleagues, but also the clients and the other consultants that you're working with. So.
That's great. I love that. And what can you just tell us about one of your favorite projects?
I do have this one project that unfortunately didn't get built. It was a church project that was designed, and I can't really talk about it much just because it was a non-disclosure. But it was unique, and the client was special, and we used unique materials. We had designed it using a more advanced in the sense of it was designed for resilience. I don't know, many people might not know of this type of structure, but it's a braced frame and it's using steel and concrete in a special way It's called a bucklingly restrained braced frame, and this type of structure can take tension and compression quite well, and won't get damaged, similar to like the more ancient types of braced frames. So we applied that type of system on top of a concrete podium. So it was unique, and I really enjoyed working with the client, and it took a lot of time, and we had a pretty big team working on it. So I'd say this is probably my biggest challenge in terms of managing a team in our office and working with other people. So it was fun and challenging.
I want to kind of move on to talk a little about your schooling. So you were a civil engineer. I assume you were a civil engineer. And I'm wondering, what college classes did you use the most, or have you used the most in your career?
For structural engineering, even the pretty early on in my career, I went to school in Canada, and this is at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. And even in second year, we're diving into statics and mechanics, and I would say that there's a lot of just the basic analyses that you're going to use day to day. And so if I would say anything, like, you just need to learn those basic fundamentals. And I don't know, I feel like there are definitely parts of your undergraduate and graduate degrees where there are going to be holes. And I think the biggest part for holes is gaining the breadth of what structural engineering is involved, like what's involved in structural engineering. Because you can definitely understand and gain proficiency in analyzing any type of problem, but ultimately there's a part of our career that comes like even your first or second year, and that is understanding other building systems. So there's mechanical and electrical plumbing, and really understanding architecture and how things go together. That takes years and years to develop. And I don't think I necessarily had appreciated back in the day all that was involved. And I do feel like I've gained a better understanding of it now, but I still think there are things I could work on to improve my proficiency as a structural engineer and as a manager. So I'd say for people just starting off in their structural engineering career, definitely pay attention to your analysis classes, but also think about integration, how things come together. Think about constructability, because not all engineering programs are the same, and if there are opportunities for you to develop skills in spatial awareness, take those classes, because I can't tell you how important the ability to visualize something is to your understanding of the breadth of a problem. Spatial awareness is very key in structural engineering.
No, that's great. So that's probably, is that one of the things, or do you have other things you would have done differently in college? You know, now knowing what you do after working in structural engineering for 20 years, you know, there are things you would have done differently in college now that you have the experience that you do.
I was fortunate enough to have taken a lot of art classes, which I think really helped. And even in my engineering program in undergraduate program, in first year, they had a drafting class, and it wasn't just drafting like 2D, it was drawing in orthogonal views. So I know that some engineering programs don't have that, but if there is an opportunity for you to work on an interdisciplinary project, I would strongly encourage it, and to draw things, because even every little detail that you make, you're not going to really understand the load path until you draw it. And I don't know how much people emphasize understanding load path, but that is a big part of our understanding of what structural engineering is, and our role as a structural engineer, really, because we have there's a lot of weight on what we do. There's a lot of responsibility. Our job is to keep buildings safe, but you may not know what the breadth of the loads that are on the building and how they get to the foundation, whether you're in a seismic zone or wind dominant zone. So it's really important to think about the load path.
Yeah, that's great advice. And you're right, as far as, I mean, the importance of the work that you do, keeping us safe, and especially out in California, keeping things safe as can be, during the earthquakes. I mean, that's fantastic. And that's interesting because you don't necessarily think of engineering and drawing and art and all that, but what I'm hearing is it's really it's really been helpful for you that you had that background, an important skill, that if people want to be structural engineers, to really try to evolve their drawing skills and their art skills. That's great. And talk about skills, what skills do you think have been most important to your career?
Communication. I definitely think that learning how to communicate is a big part of what we do. So there's different types of communications, communication of relating to relationships, and developing opportunities, and conversations about how you get to point A to point B. But I think in our consultant world, what's not emphasized enough is the ability to communicate. And I'm not just talking about communicating about your actual design work. Like, the interactions that you do with your colleagues is so important.
So would you recommend in structural engineering, or do you recommend someone to get their master's in structural engineering?
Definitely. I think that it's important to be not only competitive with other people in our profession, people coming out of their degrees. I think if you are confident in your career choice in structural engineering, and you have the financial means, or are able to request a grant or get some kind of funding, carve out that opportunity to do it when you can. It doesn't have to be straight out of your undergraduate degree if you're strapped with cash, or if you just need to break up your education just from burnout. It's perfectly fine to do that, but generally, like in our profession, it's more respected to have completed a master's degree. There are certainly avenues that you can take to, if you don't want to pursue a master's degree, and you can still become a very good engineer. And those career paths really involve a lot of self-directed learning. And it's not easy to do, but it's definitely doable. But it requires a commitment from yourself and mentors and your friends and family to push you along, because you can definitely gain the proficiency learning on your own. You don't have to go to a school and institution to do that. So I'm saying two things, but I think if there's a way for you to do your master's degree, do it. If it's difficult and it's just plans out better for you, then you can certainly find a career path and be a good structural engineer if you don't do your master's degree, but you do have to make time while you're working to learn what you need to learn to gain that confidence.
That's really, really helpful advice for those students trying to figure out what to do. So thank you for that. Other advice, or what do you wish you had known when you first started that first job? What do you wish you had known that maybe you didn't know, or happy that you did know that maybe other people don't know?
That you should do regularly is do check-ins with yourself. I think we, in our society, in our culture, we get very busy. We get stuck in this busyness of day, whether it's with social activities or deadlines in the work that we do, and responding to people with respect to the projects that we're working on. But I don't think we necessarily take enough time to explore ourselves, and in terms of what opportunities we have and what are missing. So being aware of where your next steps are, even if it's not tomorrow, but you're having a vision for how you're going to attain goals that are harder. if even if it means like very small incremental bite-sized chunks that you carve into your week, and because those little bite-sized chunks will help you build confidence and proficiency in the work that you do.
I love that advice to kind of just take some time out and do a check-in with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're so busy. I'm sure you're busy, you know, you're working, you have 3 kids, and yet you realize how important it is just to take a moment out, just to think about your, you know, where you're at, where you want to be. And that, yeah, it's important both when you're 20 years experience and also when you're just starting out. So I absolutely love that advice.
Thanks.
Great advice. Great advice. Thank you. I want to move on to, I know that you're a leader in the structural engineering engagement and equity program. And I recognize probably most of our listeners don't know what that program is. So can you just explain a little about that program?
Yeah, no problem. Approximately 5.5 years ago, around 2014, I'd been going through a kind of like a rough patch in my career. And a part of it was just transitioning into a different role in my life. I had 3 children, and the youngest one was maybe 3 or 4 months old. And I'd started to notice that there weren't many women in leadership positions throughout the Bay Area or in my circles. And I felt like there was a void in that part of my life. And so a big part of it was just acknowledging that I wanted more influencers in helping me shape my career and helping me make decisions in my life. So it took a little bit of soul searching, and I found myself a partner to help me lead this group. And so in 2015, we submitted a proposal to our local structural engineering association, and it's for Northern California. And we got a grant, kind of an amount approved, a budget approved. It wasn't very much, but it was enough to like just seed money for us to start a conversation. And so our goal was to start with metrics, in the sense that we wanted to understand what issues people were experiencing and what factors influenced engagement and equity in our profession. And so our long-term goal was to understand the problems and to work towards building a community and expanding the conversation so that we can all work together as a community to improve engagement so that we can retain all the talent that we've engaged right from the beginning.
That's fantastic. And so you talked about kind of starting with just measuring where we're at, you know, type thing, or, you know, measuring the information, which is very, very, very good, very logical and things like that to really understand that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, based on that, you're obviously, you know, moving on to type thing. So can you tell us a little about what you found and what you're doing as a result of what you found?
Yeah, some of the more recent findings we've learned in the most recent round of survey from 2018 that there is increased diversity in our profession. So if you look along the spectrum from younger engineers to more senior engineers, there's a lot more diversity in terms of gender, in terms of ethnic representation, race, sexual orientation and identity. So all of the spectrums, like there's definitely a lot more diversity, which I think is really positive. But the other thing to note is that when there's diversity, you have to learn, find the tools to retain these people. If they're not feeling welcome, or if they feel like an outsider, that they don't belong, you're not going to be able to eventually, you know, reduce the problem of poor equity in the more senior positions. So one of our kind of goals is to understand the breadth of diversity and how that impacts our profession and what we can do to influence firm leaders and people who are contributing to workplace culture setup conversations, to have those healthy conversations about changes that they can make, even if they're minor. So it really starts with understanding your staff, understanding the employees that you took so hard, like you spent so much energy to convince them to join your company. So like you invest so much time and money into developing engineers to become proficient. And it just is a real shame when people are dissatisfied or not engaged in the work that they do, or just don't feel like they belong, or find a different place that has a better reflection of the values that they uphold. That it really is important for people around the globe to acknowledge the unique requests and wishes that people have.
That's great. I mean, that's important work that you're doing. So thanks for doing that work.
And that kind of ties in with like your question about how do you pick the firm that's best for you? You know, as people are making decisions on which companies to choose, find a company that has values that are well aligned with yours, and ask as many questions as you can of the leaders and people of the same position that you will be encountering, to understand what it's like to work at that firm.
That's fantastic advice, and I love that advice to basically just ask the questions of the company as far as what is their values, because that's probably gonna be the best. Is that the best way to figure that out, I assume? Or if you really want to,
ask. Some people don't even put it on their websites. It's not something that's plastered everywhere, and a lot of times people will wear it as pride. And if the principals can't list off their values, there's something wrong. You know, like there has to be something that they consistently value, and then otherwise there are definitely wishes. But you know, like I think, you know, I lucked out to find a firm that really supported my vision of what a fulfilling career is. And I just hope that more people in our profession and more younger folks will make that effort to do some soul searching before they dive into any commitment in an employment opportunity.
Yeah, and I know especially if your viewers on the video are kind of younger, first job, you know, you're just thankful to have that first job.
Yes.
But I think you have an important point, is that if it's not a company that aligns with your values, you may not want to be continuing in that. And so trying to figure out, you know, initially, are you aligned?
Exactly. I mean, every like you're gonna, you know, young engineers are going to be given maybe 1 or 2, maybe 5 employment opportunities, and you acknowledge that the first one you take isn't always going to be the golden nugget. You know, you just move on, and you appreciate what you learned and keep those relationships positive. You don't burn bridges or structures of any nature, but you know, you keep those relationships and hang on to what you've learned, and don't take things for granted, because every opportunity is, you know, is prize.
I love that. So you take advantage of your first job opportunity, but if it's not the right fit, realize there probably is another place where it is the right fit.
Yeah, and that ties into my next big thing, is just like build a network of people who advocate for you, people who really care about you, who understand you, and especially people who question your choices, like not just like on purpose, but really like get you to think about whether you're making the right decisions through varied milestones in your career.
And how do you suggest people find those people to really help them in that way?
For me, it was through the professional association, so Structural Engineers Association of Northern California, but there's also ASCE with American Society of Civil Engineers, Structural Engineering Institute, and if there's not access to any of those, just connect with people on LinkedIn. And when I say connect with people on LinkedIn, I really mean like take the time to write an opening statement that explains why you want to connect that particular individual, and don't make it a cookie cutter template email. It should be personalized. So, you know, we talk about giving people opportunities to advance, to develop. It's important to kind of early on in your career, you may not have too many opportunities to disagree, like with the project assignments. But over time, as you develop proficiency, you need to learn to advocate for yourself in the types of projects that you're working on. If you find yourself being pigeonholed into a specific role or task, or a specific type of building or sector, and you don't see yourself advancing, that's it's worth it to speak up about it. And the good thing about our work culture nowadays is that people are moving away from the annual performance review. And the problem with the annual performance review is that it's just this, you check in and then you get from some certain advisors a bunch of ideas and advice, and they usually pat you on the back and say, good job, keep plodding along. But it also lends to kind of a little bit of toxicity in the sense of there's not enough transparency in the day-to-day ways that you can improve. So we're moving away from the performance reviews to more regular check-ins. And I really encourage people, if your firm doesn't have that culture, to make that request. Can you have a check-in with your direct supervisor to get feedback, not just on your work, but how you communicate, your requests for opportunities for different types of projects. That's when those types of conversations can happen. And if they're set up in a consistent fashion, then it's easier for you to facilitate and to go through that process of expressing your wishes. I would say that a lot of the tools that we aren't equipped with coming out of school is having difficult conversations. So how do you train yourself to have that difficult conversation about your pay gap, your pay equity? How do you say, hey, I don't think I'm getting paid as much as Tommy, who has fewer years of experience than me. How do you even bring that up? Or how do you bring up the fact that Johnny gets to work on this high end level of analysis where you're just working on the same type of cookie cutter, So acknowledge where your opportunities are, and be aware and have regular check-ins. You need to lubricate those skills every so often. And that'll make you a better engineer, I think.
That's great advice, to advocate for yourself, and like you said, have those difficult conversations. It's difficult for everyone, especially as you're a younger person.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great. Did you all have like a resource available on the website or something where companies that may be interested in this topic can go to for more information?
Yeah, we now have 2 SE3 websites. I will share them with you. One of them is SE3Project.org, and the other one is SE3Committee.com. I'll share them with you afterwards. But generally, like our websites, especially the one that's been around for longer, the one with SE3Project.org has been around for a long time. There are a set of best practices that we developed sometime between 2016 and 2017. And it's essentially, we took the results from the 2016 survey and we came up with a bunch of results, and we took those results and created basically a toolkit for anybody who is in their career, whether you're an entry-level engineer or a project manager, senior engineer, or a principal. And the idea is that this resource, this best practices guide, is intended for you to help improve the conversations in your office, and for you to have career agency.
Okay, so that's great. So what we'll do is we'll include a link to those below the video so people can access it. Those are good suggestions for companies that employees can maybe bring up to their company if the company isn't, adopting some of that. So what do you think is the best way, if your company is not really, no one's talking about these issues, no one's talking about, engagement, equity, inclusiveness, what do you think is the best way for maybe an employee to bring this up within their company?
I would start with a one-on-one conversation with anyone in the more senior position, it doesn't have to be an owner or principal, who's willing to listen. I think it's not easy to bring, like I said, it's not easy to bring up these issues, but sometimes it's just, you can even make it kind of more anonymous and say, hey, I noticed that we're not doing this, and some of our competitors are doing this. And I would really love, and I think it would work well for our culture if we were to implement this.
So I love that advice. I mean, trying to approach these type of things one-on-one. It doesn't have to be confrontational. It can really be more educational type thing. So that's great advice.
And you know, in our profession, we tend to be a little timid and like have a hard time bringing up difficult things. So sometimes, if it means finding another a cohort, somebody else who's experiencing something similar, that is also very effective. And then you can advocate for each other, because that partnership really helps.
Yeah, and in my experience, and I assume your experience too, it's not, when people are not being inclusive, it's not intentional.
Mm-hmm.
It's typically just not thinking about it, not being aware of it. And so, so again, I think if people, you know, bring it, like you said, not confrontational, really just those one-on-one discussions, you know, often, you know, people just like I said, they weren't aware of the issue.
Yeah.
So final question, and this can be regarding any area or aspect of your career, and that is, if someone's just graduating, they said they got their master's in structural engineering, they're looking for their first job. What advice would you give them?
I would have to start with saying, you don't have to be that picky in the beginning in terms of your firm. If you have the opportunity to be picky, then be picky. And that means kind of like, if you've been doing well in school, if you're well-rounded, and employers are offering you opportunities because they acknowledge you have a great personality and you have the right cluster of skills and personality, then be picky. But if you aren't given that many opportunities, take what you can get and live with it, work with it as long as you can. And if you might find that you're happy where you are, but don't feel locked in, because there are definitely opportunities. You don't have to stay in the same city, you can always move, but acknowledge when if you're reaching a halt in your advancement, in your development, and always ask yourself if you are attaining the goals that you had always had, and acknowledge that your goals will change.
Great advice. That's really good advice. I appreciate that. So thanks, everyone. That was our discussion about structural engineering, as well as some of the information about structural engineering engagement and equity program, the SE3 program that you can look at online to find out more about. And if you have a different engineering topic you want more information about, just email us at info@repicture.com, and we'd love to talk to you about that. Okay,
great, thank you so much, Lynn. I really enjoyed our conversations and look forward to hearing more about how your successes go through.